in and goes without, this
Yes.
feedback loop.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking you is to address the issue of consciousness.
Yes.
And will and free will within this context. Because you're saying we add something to it. We can add to it.
We change it.
We change it. We can modify it.
Right.
So
We always do. We always modify it because as soon as you experience it, you modify it.
So I know this is a big question, but what is this consciousness that we have that modifies? What's the difference between me, you, who can modify this versus some other being that cannot modify it, or modify it partially, or modify it in a different way? What's the difference?
The difference is the homage.
That's
okay,
right.
the amount of resistance and the amount of information that's moving through. Okay, so you're saying, I want you to address consciousness, but okay, what is consciousness in this view? In this view, consciousness is the information loop moving through, right? In order to be self-aware, you have to have feedback. See, consciousness is a feedback between the external world and the internal world. And so that's fundamental to all things. So then all things are conscious. All things are feeding information to the vacuum, and the vacuum is feeding it back. Okay? The amount that you're able to feed into the system is related directly to your amount of resistance and how much information can come in. Right? And so that is what makes the difference between you and me, or the other person, or the other person, or the other person. But if you're asking, why am I not, if it's all the same, why don't we all look the same? Then my answer is because we all have a different angle of perspective on everything. So if you're the center of the universe, and I'm the center of the universe, you're the center of the universe from your perspective, I'm the center of the universe from my perspective, this is the center of the universe from its perspective, you're looking at this and I'm looking at this, I'm always going to interpret this differently than you. Just a little teeny weeny bit, and that'll make me a little different. And all these little differences eventually add up to you looking the way you look and me looking the way I look. And that makes us think we're different. But basically, it's just because we all have a different point of perspective on all things.
So is that, from your point of view, from this vantage point of view, is that what we call free will?
Okay, free will means, okay, in this point of view, just the fact that you have a different perspective on things, that you always will, because I'll never observe it from your center, and you'll never observe it from my center, is only true as long as we don't move scales. Okay? If we move scales, for instance, if all of a sudden we both became the center of the earth, right? Now we would have the same perspective. Okay? That is a crossing of the event horizon. Okay? Now, so that's one thing. So I would say to you, in technical terms, that free will is only a local phenomenon. Only a local phenomenon. That is, locally, you have free will. That is, you can interpret things the way you want them. But ultimately, there's larger scales that are doing the same. And you're subject to those scales. And so, if you get out of line too far, those scales will make sure that you go back in line. And so you always have a fail-safe system in the universe, right? So that things can always go towards coherency, and no one thing can all of a sudden destroy everything. You see? Because after, let's say you believe in reincarnation. You shoot your foot, okay, it hurts, kills you, whatever. All right, then you come back, you shoot your foot again. Dang, did it again. All right, come back. Eventually, you'll get the idea that shooting your foot is not the best way to go about it, right? So, the universe will always bring you to further and further coherency. And actually, I believe you even see that in our equations. It doesn't matter how whacked out our physics get and how many dimensions we have to add. we can't even get out of the truth, meaning it's there, it might not be understood, it might not be complete, but it's always bringing us in that direction. So there's a higher scale of coherency, and then there's the individual, on the local level, free will.
Very clear, thank you.
Thank you. I think we got to go to the mic, because...
When you said the word homage, are you saying homage, meaning piety, reverence? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was making a play on word. Okay, Om is the Prama Om from the Hindus that represents a moment of high alignment, and Oms in circuitry is a resistor, is the quantity of resistance of a resistor.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Hi.
Okay, let's make that our last question, because
She's been waiting for a long time.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I have to acknowledge there's an element of hypocrisy, because I own a cell phone and a laptop, but my question is about the need for a device.
Right.
Because ultimately, that's not your ultimate goal with all of this. You've done a brilliant job of explaining to the Western mind what 5,000 years or more of Hindu gurus have been telling us all along.
Right.
So isn't the point to take it within and learn to then radiate it out, but from within? What is the purpose of the device? Because then doesn't that become a tool for power and corruption?
Right.
Does that make sense? Does the question make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You got to remember that power and corruption and all these things, they're just tools for the learning. Huh? And so, when you learn to walk, you fall and hurt yourself and, learn better and, you should
So the device would just be a crutch then?
No, I wasn't saying that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, and this is a very fundamental, I started the lecture with this, it's a very fundamental problem. Like I was saying, spiritual people say we don't need no technology, and, physicists say we don't need no consciousness. I understand what you're saying to me is that I've got this image of purity. And in this image of purity, there is no device involved. Okay, that I'm all powerful. I can do whatever I want. The problem is that in that vision, first of all, which was brought into your mind and based on religious beliefs, the concept, the fundamental concept is that there's a division between your consciousness and atomic structure. That the external atomic world is not part of your higher potential. And what I'm saying to you is that if you eliminate that, you're missing half the feedback. That is, so that's an esoteric response to your question. And I know you might say, well, you're not really answering what I'm saying. But I want to give you another example. It doesn't matter how many gurus on the planet are able to reach nirvana.
Or manifest gems in the palm of their hand?
Whatever.
Okay.
It's irrelevant, because changes on the planet are occurring much faster than all of us becoming these gurus. Okay? And there's great challenge in being able to survive. So at this point, any, non-application of these higher thoughts will only result on all the gurus and the rest of the people not making it. Right? So that, I assure you, and I'll give you another example, because it's so important. You sit and meditate and you go and visit Alpha Centaurus, okay, let's say, or you go and orbit Jupiter in your consciousness, okay? That's great. But I assure you that if I landed a craft in your backyard, opened the door, took you on, and brought you to Jupiter, or brought you to Alpha Centaurus, or brought you to the other side of the galaxy, your level of consciousness would go through.